Iran, they follow Persian, they call it Mashin, which is from French, machine, but it's, they call it Mashin. And then in Turkey, it's Araba, which is Turkish. So even if one tries to have a unified alphabet, even if there is a grade in Kurdistan one day, which is extremely remote, but one can see that how much effort it should take to unify if anybody attempts to do such a thing. And I don't know what they would, but why they would, but that's the difficulty or challenge. The status of Kurdish. Let me start by Turkey. As I said, until 1992, the language was legally banned to be used. In Iran, there have been times when it was banned, so that's why my arrow is shorter than the Turkish one. But then what Sue Wright calls negative rights have existed in Iran, and also a little bit in Syria, and now recently in Turkey. By negative rights, Sue Wright means just tolerating the language. Say you have the right to be, that's it. I don't help you, I don't promote you, I don't allow you to be taught in school, but you can exist and you can do whatever you like. But of course, there is not much to do when the state doesn't support you, but that's what it means by negative rights. In Iraq, believe it or not, even under the rule of Saddam Hussein, Kurdish has the right, had the right to be taught in schools. And just for a very short period, it was, there was limited resources and support in some areas. But for most of the time, Kurdish has been allowed and has been the language of schooling, of business, and it was never banned in Iraq. And now recently it has changed totally. For example, this is the recent Iraqi passport. This says in Arabic. This one says it in Kurdish. Now it's interesting if you ask, which Kurdish? It's a very good question to ask. It's really an amazing phenomenon. It's a Kurdish that you just say Kurdish, you don't ask over there. Because the minute you ask which Kurdish, the problem starts, and the discussion starts, and the debate. So it's just Kurdish. And if you ask anybody, is there such a language as Kurdish? Again, the question is, which one? Because there is no such a thing as Kurdish. And this is a very interesting case. I'll get to this more. But so Arabic, Kurdish, and English. So it shows that now in Iraq something is different, very different from the other parts of Kurdistan. And that is, this area is now an autonomous region in Iraq since 1992. The Kurds have been managing their own affairs in this area. They have their own elected parliament, and in fact this is a picture of the Kurdistan, and it calls Kurdistan Parliament. And then they have a regional government with a prime minister, and they even have a president. The current president of Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, is President Masoud Barzani. So it's a de facto state, almost independent. Recently, however, with the elections in Iraq and perhaps more stability, a little bit more stability in Iraq, now they have they are a much more active part of Iraq in the Iraqi National Assembly. They're very active and in the whole business of the nation. But they also run their own affairs very independently. Well, this also has meant language planning. You can't, it's almost impossible to have a nation without having language planning. So the challenge is this. First of all, what to do with non-Kurdish minority languages, that is Turkomani, Syriac, and also Arabic in places like Kirkuk. They have linguistic rights. And in 2008, there is a great article published, well documented by Tovis Goodnow-Congress and Fernandez, Desmond Fernandez, that documents what happens in Iraqi Kurdistan and the fact that minorities, non-Kurdish minorities, those that have always believed to be non-Kurdish, They have linguistic rights. They can send their kids to school in their own language. They have the state support. And in fact, they find it to be a very rare positive example or instance in the region, because it hasn't happened in the neighboring states to give linguistic minorities this kind of rights. And this is good that Iraqi Kurdistan is the first one in the region grants linguistic rights to these minorities. This is not the problem. The problem is this one. If they want to, and they attempted to select one of the Kurdish varieties as their official language, which one? And that's the problem. This is the region that they are. So if we recap the varieties, for example, this is the Kurmanji variety, which is, these are not mutually intelligible. This is really important to stress. They are not mutually intelligible unless there has been lots of contact, a great deal of contact between the speakers, and then of course, if you have a great deal of content, even those languages that are believed to be distinct languages start to be comprehensible. So that is the same thing. But of course, this is very unpopular in any Kurdish gathering to mention that these are languages. So the proper word would be dialects, the dialects. I have opted for varieties. It may not be popular, but I believe it's an appropriate one. So they're language, Kurdish varieties, or yes, Kurdish varieties. So to move on, and you can see this one because I will talk about this now. It's a very small portion around. Now, which variety would you choose? There is Northern Kurdish, which is Kurmanji. It is standardized, semi-standardized, I should say, if you compare it to a language like English or French or a modern language. So it is semi-standardized, really. A working language of one province only. Not majority in Iraqi Kurdistan, although majority in the entire Kurdistan, but not in Iraqi Kurdistan. And then majority, yes, so I said that. Now, the Central is more standardized. It is the working language of the Kurdish regional government. It is language of two provinces. It is implicitly recognized as the Kurdish language in Baghdad. So for example, when I showed you the passport, the Iraqi passport, it showed this one actually. The Iraqi passport had this one on. And then it's not the majority in all Kurdistan, but majority in Iraqi Kurdistan. This one is not standardized. It is spoken by about 50,000 people in Iraqi Kurdistan, very small minority, and in fact, its own speakers consider it as being an endangered language. So which one would you choose as the official language of Iraqi Kurdistan? I think by all standards that we have got used to this point, one would go for this one. So they did. But it didn't work. In 2007, about 53 people of the intellectuals or Sorani speakers, the majority of Iraqi Kurdistan, signed a petition and sent it to Kurdistan Regional Parliament and asking them to recognize Sorani as the official language, because the argument goes every nation needs a language, and that's the nation-state ideology, I would call, and then if I can go to this one, yes. So, and then what they did, the KRG noticed that there was some opposition to the request, and not many people were easily willing to go along with that. So what they did, they set up a committee managed by what is called Kurdish Academy in the region. And they set up a conference. Prior to the conference, they asked many people for input, including some linguists in the West. And then finally the conference was held, and it was not successful. In fact, it ended with no results. Even there were attempts at the conference to misrepresent some of the input from some linguists, especially a very famous one, well-respected one, Professor Amir Hassanpour from the University of Toronto, who is well-known and perhaps one of the most known linguists and respected. But, and he was one of those who recommended that both varieties, if there is supposed to be an official language, both varieties should be declared as official. And then his letter was misread, saying that Professor Hassanpour recommends that only one be the official variety. But of course, and that is something with a few friends yesterday, I had this discussion, it's not easy to do these things these days. Simply one of the participants just walks out the conference hall and makes a phone call to Toronto and says, Dr. Hassanpour, we had this discussion before. Is that what you wrote to the Academy? He said, absolutely not. How could I? I have talked to you. I have written about this before. So then they tell the Academy, they say that it's all fraud, filled with fraud, this conference, so we don't believe you, and then the conference ended with no results. So there is a huge debate as to what variety should be chosen, and now I am desperate for time. So, what to do with these questions? The fact of the matter is that sometimes when we consider a speech variety only a dialect of a language, over time the speakers may reconsider their status. Not just official status, but even their names. Because language is a social thing, it cannot be ever divorced from our economic, historical, socio-economic realities. Not in the classroom, not on campus, because that's the only opportunity I get to speak English. Now, a few weeks went by. The very same woman that my friend was talking about and taking the ASL class with came to me and consulted me as a faculty member whether she should take one of my introductory courses to applied linguistics. And it turned out that she was Kurdish, a Kurd from Iran. And then I didn't say anything, but however, I revealed the secret to my good friend. I said, do you know she's Kurdish? She said, no. Are you kidding me? Because my friend is Kurdish. So guess what happened? The next day she goes and she says, so you're Kurdish. I said, oh my God, are you too? And they start Kurdish, talking all the time. Now my friend says, I can't stop her, prevent her from talking Kurdish. Now I have to tell her, could we speak English a little bit sometimes? Why? Because Persian was a second language for both of them. It was not connected to their identity. They were forced to go to school in Persian. They were educated in Persian in Iran. But it's not a part of their identity, although they might have gone to school 12 years elementary and high school, and then actually one of them also 4 years university, went to school for 16 years in Persian, maybe lived in Persian areas, but still it's a second language. So in Canada, it's very easy for her to abandon it and instead choose English. But when it comes to the mother tongue, she couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Sheyholislami.